The little bear's promise. The afternoon sun cast long golden shadows across the cobblestone plaza, where the gentle hum of conversation and laughter created a symphony of everyday life. Children's voices echoed between the old brick buildings, mixing with the distant sound of street musicians and the soft rustle of autumn leaves dancing in the breeze. It was the kind of day that felt suspended in time, where moments stretched like honey and every breath carried the promise of something special. Marcus adjusted his white button-down shirt and checked his watch for the third time in 10 minutes. His palms were sweating despite the cool October air, and his heart hammered against his ribs with a rhythm that had nothing to do with the brisk walk he'd taken to get here. In his hands, he cradled a small teddy bear, nothing fancy, just a simple brown bear with a red ribbon around its neck and button eyes that seemed to hold secrets. He'd been planning this moment for weeks, rehearsing what he would say, how he would approach her, what he would do if she said no. The little bear had been sitting on his dresser for a month, a silent witness to his hopes and fears, his late-night doubts and early morning certainties. Across the plaza, near the old fountain where water danced in crystalline arcs, he spotted her. Emma sat on a wooden bench, her blonde hair catching the light like spun gold, her attention focused on the small figure beside her. His breath caught in his throat as he realized she wasn't alone. The little girl couldn't have been more than 5 years old. She had Emma's same golden hair, braided with small blue ribbons, and she wore a white dress dotted with tiny flowers. Her legs swung back and forth as she sat, not quite long enough to reach the ground, and she clutched a worn picture book to her chest. Marcus felt his carefully constructed plans crumble like sand between his fingers. Emma had never mentioned having a daughter. In all their months of dating, all their long conversations over coffee and quiet dinners, all their walks through the city and lazy Sunday mornings, she had never once spoken of a child. He stood frozen, 20 feet away, watching the tender way Emma brushed a strand of hair from the little girl's face, the protective curve of her body as she leaned closer to point at something in the book. The scene was beautiful and heartbreaking all at once, beautiful because he could see the love radiating between them, heartbreaking because it meant everything he thought he knew about their relationship was built on shifting ground. The little bear felt heavier in his hands now, its soft fur somehow accusatory against his palms. He'd bought it as a silly romantic gesture, something to make Emma smile before he asked the question that had been burning in his chest for months. Now it felt like evidence of his own blindness, his own assumptions. "Mommy, why is that man looking at us?" The child's voice carried across the space between them, clear and curious. Emma's head turned, and when her eyes met his, Marcus saw a flash of panic cross her features before it was quickly replaced by something that looked like resignation. She said something soft to the little girl, then stood and walked toward him, leaving her daughter on the bench with strict instructions not to move. "Marcus," she said when she reached him, her voice barely above a whisper. "I can explain. You have a daughter." The words came out flat, not accusatory, just factual. He was still processing, still trying to reconcile this new reality with everything he thought he knew. Emma's hands twisted together in front of her, a nervous gesture he'd come to recognize over their months together. "Her name is Lily. She's 5. You never told me." Again, just a statement of fact. He wasn't angry, not yet, at least. He was just confused, hurt, trying to understand why the woman he'd been planning to propose to had kept something so fundamental hidden from him. "I wanted to." Emma's voice cracked slightly. "God, Marcus, I wanted to tell you so many times. But you have to understand, she's everything to me. She's my whole world, and I've made mistakes before, trusting the wrong people, letting men into our lives who didn't understand what it means to be a mother, who saw her as an obstacle instead of a gift." Marcus looked past her to where Lily sat on the bench, still clutching her book, her eyes wide as she watched them talk. Even from a distance, he could see the intelligence in those eyes, the same bright spark that had drawn him to Emma in the first place. "What happened to her father?" he asked quietly. Emma's laugh was bitter. "He left when I told him I was pregnant. Said he wasn't ready to be a father, that we were too young, that I was ruining both our lives." She wiped at her eyes with the back of her hand. "Maybe he was right about being too young. I was only 19, but I've never regretted her, not for a single second." The little bear in Marcus's hands seemed to pulse with warmth. He looked down at it, this simple toy that had represented his hopes for their future, and suddenly saw it differently. Not as a romantic gesture between two adults, but as something else entirely, a bridge, perhaps, between the life he'd imagined and the life that was actually standing in front of him. "What's her favorite color?" he asked. Emma blinked, clearly not expecting that question. What, Lily? What's her favorite color? Does she like animals? What makes her laugh? Why are you asking? Marcus didn't answer. Instead, he walked past Emma toward the bench where Lily sat waiting. He could hear Emma's sharp intake of breath behind him, could sense her fighting the instinct to rush forward and protect her daughter from this stranger who might hurt them both. He stopped a few feet away from the bench and crouched down to Lily's level. She regarded him with solemn eyes, her grip tightening on her book. "Hi," he said softly. "I'm Marcus. I'm a friend of your mommy's." Lily glanced toward Emma, who had followed him but kept her distance, then back to Marcus. "Mommy says I'm not supposed to talk to strangers. Your mommy is very smart. She's right, you shouldn't talk to strangers. But maybe we don't have to be strangers." He held up the little bear. "This little guy has been looking for someone special to be friends with. Do you think you might know anyone who'd like to meet him?" Despite herself, Lily leaned forward slightly, her eyes fixed on the teddy bear. "What's his name?" "Well, that's the thing. He's been waiting for just the right person to give him a name. Someone who would take really good care of him and help him go on adventures." Lily's reserve cracked just a little. "What kind of adventures?" "Oh, all kinds. Maybe tea parties with other stuffed animals. Or trips to the park to watch the ducks. Or reading stories together before bedtime." Marcus glanced up at Emma, who was watching the interaction with tears streaming down her cheeks. "He's a very good listener, and he's excellent at keeping secrets. And he gives the very best hugs. Can I hold him?" Marcus looked to Emma, who nodded almost imperceptibly. He placed the bear gently in Lily's small hands, and watched as her face transformed with wonder. She held the toy carefully, as if it were made of spun glass, and traced one finger along its soft ears. "He's very soft," she whispered. "He is. And you know what? He told me something very important before I came here today." Lily's eyes widened. Teddy bears can't talk. Maybe not with words, but if you listen very carefully, you can hear what they're thinking. And this little bear told me that he's been looking everywhere for a little girl who's brave and kind and smart. A little girl who would love him even if he's not the fanciest bear in the world. "I think he's perfect," Lily said solemnly, and Marcus felt something crack open in his chest. He looked up at Emma again, seeing her as if for the first time. Not just as the woman he'd fallen in love with, but as a mother who had raised this incredible little person, who had sacrificed and struggled and loved with a fierceness that took his breath away. "Lily," he said, still crouched at her level, "would it be okay if I asked your mommy something very important?" The little girl nodded, clutching the bear to her chest. Marcus stood slowly, his knees protesting the movement, and turned to face Emma. She was still crying, but there was something like hope beginning to dawn in her eyes. "I had a whole speech planned," he said, loud enough for both of them to hear. "I was going to tell you how you changed my life, how you made me want to be a better man. I was going to promise to love you forever and always put you first." Emma's hand flew to her mouth. "But I realize now that those promises aren't enough. Because loving you means loving all of you, including this amazing little person who's apparently inherited your suspicious nature and your beautiful eyes." He dropped to one knee, not in front of Emma, but in front of both of them. From his pocket, he pulled out a small velvet box. "Emma, I don't just want to marry you. I want to be a family with you and Lily. I want to teach her how to ride a bike and help her with her homework and scare away monsters from under her bed. I want to sit in the front row at school plays and cheer at soccer games and embarrass her when she brings home her first boyfriend." Lily giggled at that, and Marcus grinned at her before turning back to Emma. "I know I don't have any experience being a father. I know I'll probably mess up 1,000 times. But I love you, Emma. I love you enough to love everything that matters to you. And if you'll both let me, I want to spend the rest of my life proving that." Emma was sobbing now, her hands pressed to her face. "Marcus, you don't understand what you're asking. Being a stepfather isn't like in the movies. It's hard work and sleepless nights and endless worry. It's putting someone else's needs before your own, always. It's what you've been doing alone for 5 years," Marcus interrupted gently. "And look at what an incredible job you've done. Look at this beautiful, smart, funny little girl you've raised. Emma, you haven't been hiding an obstacle from me. You've been hiding a miracle." He opened the velvet box, revealing a simple but elegant ring. "So what do you say? Will you marry me? Will you let me be part of your family?" Emma looked down at Lily, who was watching the whole scene with rapt attention, still clutching the teddy bear. What do you think, sweetheart? Emma asked her daughter. Should we let Marcus be part of our family? Lily considered this very seriously, looking from her mother to Marcus and back again. Finally, she held up the teddy bear. Bear says yes, she announced solemnly. But only if Marcus promises to read bedtime stories with good voices. Marcus laughed, feeling lighter than he had in months. I promise to do all the voices.